Well, the day that I first heard people from the Puget Sound area kicking back and forth, and this included you and Jim Gregory, Conrad Spell from Tacoma, who's president of Local 23 at the time, Ron Magden, community historian from Tacoma, Ross Reeder from the Pacific Northwest Labor History Association was part of it. It was a discussion that happened around the visiting committee 3 years ago, I think 3 years ago is when it started, about the crisis at the UW Library in not being able to process and make accessible collections that were really rich labor history collections, and some of them were ILWU related or ILWU centered, but not just. And as so often has happened since I've been involved around the visiting committee, is I sit back and I look at the people involved in the conversation, and all of a sudden I'm impressed with not just how experienced people are, but how representative of different constituencies people are, so that collectively there's a strength and a richness of resources available that often may escape the people sitting at the table. And that's what happened to me when I heard about there are these collections, what are we going to do about them to save them, because they're going to rot and just disappear. And I'm looking, there's state legislators, there are academics, there are union officers and everything else, and that the model that was used to create first the Bridges Chair and then the Bridges Center, namely the endowment model, as well as being able to get such buy-in from such a cross-section of the campus, both students, undergraduates, graduates, but also faculty, junior and senior faculty and all that stuff. To me, the idea of a labor archive, if there was an understanding of how it could be done easily, if there was a collaborative approach from the library side, I saw it as a piece of cake. And because there was a buy-in from the library side, and because the constituency on the Bridges Center side grew, so that there was wider support, you know, from the state fed, I mean, the county labor councils and so forth. It just, to me, it just, you know, I may have been one of the first to utter it that day and put it on the agenda, but the fact that it moved the way that it did, as quickly as it did, with the pledges of support and people coming through, not just with finances, but getting their, you know, their local union or their labor council or whatever to support this idea. The people that have supported the donor campaign to get the first 3 years of funding the labor archivist together. And the fact that just having looked at the first generation of the Labor Archives website, that seeing the collections that already exist over in the library, but are now, because of the formation of the Labor Archives and the hiring of a labor archivist, has a richness beyond what anybody knew existed a month ago. But it's going to move labor history and scholarship and study and appreciation forward, and I think it's giving strength to the administration and professional staffing at the library to do more kinds of outreach programs, because that's what I think happens with the Labor Archive. It's really about outreach. I mean, it's not just servicing the research needs of on-campus people, but it's what you're doing to preserve and protect and make accessible the history of ordinary people. So whether it's Pacific Northwest collection or whatever else, it will help open things up.